Okay, having a little bit of technical difficulty today. Let me know, guys. I think I'm live. I'm going to be double checking this while I do the intro, which is not ideal for rewatching. Yeah, it looks like I accidentally have two live streams going right now. One sec. I'm gonna exit one of them. But on the stream today, we have a real prodigy. I've just been digging into him mostly this morning, and he is a dentist by trade, but he is so much more in actuality. He's an artist, he is a musician, he's a businessman. He pretty much does it all. He's someone I'm going to try emulating. And just in this interview, I'm hoping to get to the bottom of how he's doing so much. Have you heard that expression, like, you doing too much? I feel like that's him. So Kevin Stock is his name. How's it going?
Good. Thank you for having me on. Excited to chat.
Yeah, hopefully we are live because I just had a pretty solid intro, so I don't want that to get deleted. But yeah, give us a little bit of an intro on just who you are, how you got into, I guess, dentistry first, and then also how that led you to like a meat-based diet. I don't know exactly. I think you're more like a carnivore diet guy. Is that right?
Very heavy meat based is how I probably describe it. Yeah, I can give you the Cliff Notes version. Uh, so basically, I started out, my health and fitness journey very much on the fitness side of that journey, meaning I was an overweight kid and I spent the next 15 years figuring out how to not be an overweight kid, lose fat, build muscle. I got degrees in chemistry and biology in college and basically funneled all of that through, how can I build muscle? How can I lose fat? And at that time of my life, I was into health and fitness. And as far as career path, I was like, should I go to medical school? I had some doctor friends that were recommending I don't go that route. My brother's a year older than me, went that route. And I knew some dentists who were like, hey, this is a good profession. So I was like, it's health. You help people out. Sounds like a good, it sounds like a good profession. So I jumped into dentistry. And maybe it's something we talk about later, but I was in dental school and I was like, man, is this really what I want to do the rest of my life? Like sit in a dental chair, do fillings and pull teeth for 40 hours a week for 40 years. And while, it's definitely like a very important profession and you really do help people, it's not something I wanted to do 40 hours a week for 40 years. So that's where a lot of this other kind of like chaotic, kind of lifestyle came from. But that's kind of the gist. As far as how I got into meat based was I was on this fitness journey for basically 20 years, and I like I said I tell people like I cracked the fitness code and I did physique competitions in dental school and did quite well. But then when I was almost 30, turning 30, around that time, like I was happy with how I looked and was definitely not happy with how I felt. Like everything from mental performance to poor digestion to poor sleep to just like not feeling good. And it's like I was actually treating sleep patients. I'm like, I'm not even sleeping good myself. Like this is a problem. I have joint pain. Like what is going on? So then I went, for the last 5+ years, I've really dove into how do I get healthy? Like, and then how do I get healthy and fit? And I feel like I finally got to that point where I'm like, now I know how to eat, to feel my best, to look my best. Like this very complicated health and fitness thing that really is not that complicated, but because of, you can watch one YouTube video saying one thing, and the next YouTube video saying this another thing. Like there's so much information, which is great, but it's hard to tease out like what's going to work. And so that's kind of the gist of my career arc thus far.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, in doing all this research, how did you figure out what works for you? Because that's a problem a lot of people have. They're just like, they're looking on the internet and they want like just the blueprint a lot of the times.
Yep.
How do you figure out what's your personal blueprint?
So one was, doing what a lot of people probably do, watching all the YouTube videos, reading all the articles. I'm a big science guy, so I'll read like the literature, like what is like actual research saying, which is not necessarily better because a lot of research is just not very good. I mean, a lot of nutritional research is based on epidemiology, so which is, can give you a false sense of conclusions like over 80% of the time. So anyways, it's hard to know what's right to do. And so combination of learning everything I possibly could, what makes sense anatomically, scientifically, physiologically, ancestrally, and putting those pieces together, and then self experimentation. So I had done a ketogenic diet, studied the ketogenic diet, and at one point in my life, I was like, look, I'm going all in keto because I feel like maybe that's the answer. And when I had done a ketogenic prior, I always cheated, meaning I cheated on protein. I would never drop my protein below 1 gram per pound of body weight. To me, that was like a body composition principle that I was not going to break. But it was early 2017. I was like, look, if I'm going to go all in keto, I'm going to break that rule. I limited my protein to 0.75 grams per pound of lean body mass. And I did some intermittent fasting here and there, and I lost a ton of muscle mass. So probably not something that your audience wants to hear, but I was like, look, I am feeling maybe a little bit better, but I'm really sacrificing the body composition a lot. And so that led me to revisiting my research. And long story short is I was eating lots of vegetables and lean meats prior to doing ketogenic. And that got me fit, but that didn't give me health. And with the ketogenic diet, I was feeling better. So like I was like, basically what's the underlying thing that's causing my issues here? And I'd studied plant anti-nutrients and phytotoxins. I was like, maybe that's it. It's something I haven't taken seriously. And so I started removing things like lectins and oxalates and polyphenols. And for the first time in my life, started eating significant amounts of red meat because I basically needed an energy source. And so I was eating tons of red meat and basically eliminated all vegetables. And I felt like a new person. And so I went down the rabbit hole, and by mid 2017, I was only eating meat, never felt better. I was writing about the research and why I was doing it. And kind of this carnivore movement exploded towards the end of the year. So that's kind of what's taken me on that wild kind of carnivore ride.
Yeah. So are you pretty consistent since then, sticking with something similar to that?
Yeah, I did. So from mid 2017 to I'd say late 2019, like 2.5 years, I didn't eat any plants, like zero carbs, zero fiber, like the minuscule amount of carbs that you might get in some liver or something like that, and felt great. Never felt better. And late 2019, I started doing some experimentation with carbohydrates, both from like just how am I going to feel digestion wise to can I use it to help build muscle? Can I use it to help lose fat? So I've experimented with some carbohydrates since then, but mostly my diet is 90% than 90+% than beef, mostly beef, other meats, eggs, things like that.
Okay, so in your practice working with I guess like sleep, mostly sleep and dental, like the intersection there, is that kind of what you do?
Yeah, so with regard to dentistry, I there's two areas of dentistry that I basically have focused on, both kind of not full time. One is pediatric dentistry, so I see kids. I work through this company called Smile America Partners, so we go to basically rural areas that are Medicaid, basically lower socioeconomic that don't have access to dentists. So I travel there, do pediatric dentistry. Then the other area is this niche area of dentistry called dental sleep medicine, which is basically treating sleep disordered breathing, which is everything that ranges from snoring to a severe obstructive sleep apnea. And so that's been the two areas of dentistry that I've worked in.
So how does diet play in, or does it at all with like the sleeping aspect?
Well, diet plays a huge role in both aspects of dentistry, both sleep and oral health. Like, we know what leads to decay. If you're eating lots of sugar, you're eating lots of carbohydrates, that leads to oral decay. If you combine those with poor oral hygiene practices. If you don't eat those and you have, like, if you don't eat any carbohydrates and no sugar and you have poor oral hygiene habits, not necessarily a problem. But if you have poor oral hygiene and you eat those, that's a problem. But with when it comes to snoring and really obstructive sleep apnea, overweight, obesity, that's one of the leading contributors to sleep apnea, which is basically a modern day epidemic. That's probably the most undiagnosed serious medical disorder in the United States, at least in the Western world for sure. Like because it is very prevalent, very undiagnosed, and those that are diagnosed, the treatment options aren't great at this point. So that's an area I've really spent a lot of time working in.
Yeah, so you do have it's like a program or a class you have on your website, and I have the website linked down below, kevinstock.io. It's about doing the carnivore diet. It's like a master class type of a thing. What's that about? What are you teaching there?
So anyone that's done almost anyone that's done a carnivore diet or has heard of it is like this. There's this simple carnivore equation, right? It's eat meat, drink water. That's the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
Sounds easy. Okay, anyone that goes into it is going to realize pretty quickly it's not that easy. Meaning,
Okay.
when you transition, you're going to experience things, everything from like the keto flu to like really like troublesome GI issues early on when you eliminate fiber. So there's a lot of transition issues. There's a lot of fear issues, meaning like, can I really just eliminate plants? Is like, don't I need vitamin C? Don't I need fiber? What about micronutrients? How do I not get a deficiency? And then there's like things like long-term sustainability. People are like, well, what if I want to eat some carbohydrates? What are the best ones to eat? What's going to not give me gut issues? What's not going to cause inflammation? Like, how do I make it work long term? So basically, the Meat Health Academies, I spent the last over a year creating this program, is designed to help someone start from ground zero and go all the way through it and have success. Really, it is a very like in-depth program, but everything someone needs basically to find health and find fitness. Those were the two things I was after, and like I wanted to create the program. It's like if I would have had this 20 years ago, this is all I would need, and so that's basically what the program is.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. You guys can check that out. It's linked below. But when I talk to people like you strike me like I go to your website, which is great. It has a lot of writings on there, notes to self type of stuff, which is cool. And I'm reading and I'm like, this is more of the type of guy I don't really want to read what he's saying. Like, don't listen to what I say, watch what I do type of a guy, because you're doing so much and it's just like really inspiring. So I was looking, you did one thing where you were learning to make music, basically. I don't know if that was
Yep.
a yearly challenge. What was it? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a
2020,
yearly challenge.
learn to make music. I actually have some experience making music too. I was a rapper for like a year. It's harder than it
Really
looks.
nice.
It's harder than it looks, man. Uh,
Oh my! So that's when I've been doing I've been doing yearly challenges for a while. I like to challenge myself. Like, what's something I'm gonna do this year to really challenge myself?
yeah.
And in 2019, I've always been like the math and science guy, which is kind of like a left brain thing. And I feel like the right brain, creative artist, music kind of thing has been lacking. So I was like,
Yeah.
look, I'm gonna see if I can't find that right brain, get it a little bit active. So 2019, I was trying to be like, look, I'm gonna learn how to draw. That's the goal. And I set myself the rules of the year that I had to practice every day or 5 days a week at least 5 minutes. So it was not like a very intense challenge, but it was a good challenge. And like with that kind of baseline guideline, like I felt like I actually learned how to draw decently. I have a picture, a self-portrait I have there in the background. I don't know if people could see that, but yeah. So like the skills for drawing. You're able to cultivate those things that people like me generally there's this belief like you either are an artist or you're not, which one of my goals was just to kind of like disprove that kind of myth where people that like are not necessarily naturally inclined in a certain area, you can develop skills. And like in
Yeah.
2020 my goal is to I wanted to learn how to make music, and the challenge was, okay, I thought the best way to learn how to make music was to force myself just to release a song every single month in 2020. And it was such a naive challenge. Like there is so much that goes into making
Wait,
music.
it was once a month, you said?
What a song a month,
Okay.
and it was very very difficult for someone like I had zero skill. The hardest thing was like I was like, look, I'm gonna try and sing on these tracks, and man, to say I'm not a natural singer is like the understatement of the century. So yeah, that was a lot. I mean, there's a lot that goes into making music. Someone that can go from nothing to creating music on their own, they have a lot of skills, meaning like everything from music writing to singing to producing to mixing to mastering. Like there's so many skills within that one skill of making music. But I learned a tremendous amount last year trying to take care of that challenge.
Yeah, there's these certain skills I feel that are like when you see an NBA basketball player, it's very upfront. It's like that guy's a super gifted athlete. So like if you compare yourself to them, you're like, I can't dunk, I can't jump really high, probably can't be in the NBA. I think it's the same with music, but it's just we can't see it because it's more intangible. Where you get someone who's like just like Billy Joel, for example. He just has the gift. Like he's the LeBron James of music. And you look at him, he's just like, an old kind of balding guy. And you're like, why can't I do that?
Yep.
But yeah, it's like if you don't have the gift, you just can't really pursue it as much, I would say.
So what do you think about people? Because I like to challenge that idea because like I feel like I'm someone that is such an average Joe, meaning like I don't feel like I had any kind of special gifts that I was blessed when I was born. Besides great parents, I had great parents, but
That's a good
besides that, it's
gift.
like I was an overweight kid. I wasn't, so I had to work really hard to try and figure out the health and fitness thing. I was never like a super smart kid, but I had to work super hard to, get good grades in high school and then to get good grades in college, to go to dental school and graduate. So
Yeah.
I always felt like I had to work really hard without any gifts, and that's one of the reasons like I had zero gifts when it comes to like the right brain activities for sure, like music and art. But I was like, with the right amount of effort, I feel like you could be able to pursue those things if that's something you want to pursue. Because I think of things like people like the biggest pop star in the world might be Taylor Swift, for example, who's
Yeah.
absolutely a talent, but there's probably a few million, 100 million people, I don't know, that could
Yeah.
sing at her level. Maybe her gift is in music
Maybe.
writing,
Yeah. See, but
but I feel like she's not a special talent.
I don't know. That'd be tough. I don't know her well enough, but I think anyone can become proficient to where like you can make a really good song and I'd listen to it. But like there's certain people like Lil Baby. He just like smokes a blunt, stumbles into the into the booth first time ever, and it's like a hit. You know, there's the
Right.
guys like you can't compete with them. That
I agree to a point at least.
I think you
Because
disagree.
then we had because for every one of those I see people who don't have talent, world class talent, make it happen somehow. And I'm
Yeah.
like, how do these people that are not the greatest become the best at what they do? And I think for some people, there's definitely talent involved. Like that's the reason why they're there at the top. Like I think the NBA example is a great example. Like if I want to be an NBA player, probably not in the cards. 5'11", can't jump, had a decent shot, but not even good enough to make the high school team.
Yeah.
But I think there's other things where it's like if it's something you really want, you put your mind to it, then you can get there. Because I always thought talent was like example. I was invited to give a lecture at this university class, and I was talking about talent, and it was basically like helping these kids to help decide like what career path should they take. And I was like, look, if I let my talents determine where I was going, I was going to go nowhere. I would not have a job. So, and I gave an example when it came to like the art because that was right in 2019 when I was doing the challenge, where I was like, I had no art ability, but after just 40 hours of practice, this
Yeah.
is the drawing I did. And if that was the first time I ever did a drawing and showed someone that picture, they'd be like, "Oh, you're a natural artist." Well, I'm like,
Yeah.
well, so the only difference between me and a natural artist is 40 hours of practice. Like, that's not very much. So, like, talent was like, it was like a 10-second head start in a marathon. Like, okay, it's nice to have that head start, but in the grand scheme of things, it's whoever's going to like put in the time.
Where does
So,
passion fall into this equation?
I think it's essential because when it comes to the marathon, no one's going to stick at it if they're not passionate about it. That's who's going
That
to win
might
the
be the
race.
bigger factor because I went to school for computer engineering, and there's kids that they like did it in their free time as a hobby and on top of going to
Yes.
school. So like at that point, it became very apparent that I wasn't, that's not for me. I'm not that type of a person. I just didn't love it like that.
Yeah.
So it's tough to compete with the people that really do love it.
So passion is such a tricky one because I feel like,
You can build it.
yeah, it comes usually passion for me has come out of like the biggest struggles because I'm very passionate about health and fitness. Was definitely not a natural, but the reason I'm so passionate is because I dug so deep into it, and
Hmm.
I can tell you when I was doing the make the music challenge or the learn to draw challenge, a lot of times, most days when I'm trying to like take those challenge, it felt like work. It's like,
Yeah.
man, because it's like whenever you're trying to do something you don't know how to do or get better at something, there's naturally a struggle there. It's so a lot of times I feel like you said, like the passion is something that's cultivated over time. But I definitely think like those who win are the ones that are gonna stick with it through the thick and the thin, and usually it's going to be because of passion. It's like this is something that really matters to me.
Yeah. So, do you have any tools? So, like when you're doing the Learn to Draw challenge, the music challenge, a lot of people have these ideas. Like they would love to do something like that. Primarily, the people watching this, it's about like sticking to a new diet.
Yep.
What's like? How do you start adopting these new practices? Do you have any like routines you build, or like how do you do it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm a really big systems guy. And if you set the right system, I feel like you can have success. And so, for example, when it came to like learning to draw for me, my system was I'm going to practice 5 minutes a day, at least 5 days a week. Like
Hmm.
that is a ridiculously simple system. Now, I could practice 10 minutes a day if I was super motivated. I could practice an hour if I was super motivated, but there's a floor. And to set a floor that you allow yourself to drop to, but not drop through, is super critical. And to me, it's more about repetition. So, when I was drawing, I was like, look, first month I've only been doing 5 minutes a day. I'm not getting anywhere. But once the reps started getting in, it starts getting easier. And then I recognized like in 2020, the drawing challenge was over, but I had gotten to a proficiency level where I started to enjoy it more, where I could draw for 30 minutes and it didn't feel like so much work and I was getting better and you see progress. So for me, setting the right system is super critical because a lot of times people will jump into a diet and whatever diet it is, and they dive in headfirst, which is great, but it's so challenging that they give up. And so, like for me, an example would be like with the drawing challenge. If I would have said, okay, I'm going to learn how to draw, and the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to spend 8 hours a day going at this canvas, I would have failed because I didn't have 8 hours a day to dedicate it to it. And that's so like there's this idea of what's going to fit in your life and how can it grow. So for a lot of people, it's like, look, you need to take a smaller bite. Like if you want to start a diet, what is one thing you can do right now that you know you can do every day? So for a lot of people, I say, look, if you can't do anything else, start your day. First meal, fill up on animal-based nutrition. You don't have to go full carnivore. You don't have to go this. But if you make that one decision, what will tend to happen is you can be successful at it because it's your first meal of the day. Usually it's not social interaction. Okay, you stick to that. So the next two meals, whatever, don't worry about it. Over time, I find people are like, I feel really good after I eat that first meal. They start eating more meat in the other meals. And then a lot of times it's like a snowball. Before they know it, they're like, okay, I'm eating fewer processed carbs and eating fewer junk. They start seeing results. They start feeling better. And it's like a positive spiral that starts out of one small thing that they set up front that they don't allow themselves to fail at. So setting that floor.
Yeah. That's really good advice. And I think that there's this thing, I don't know, maybe it's just humans in general. I think a lot of it is maybe we don't think we can make the long term changes, like they're really intimidating. So we get super aggressive up front and we're like, today I'm doing my 2 a days, 1 hour on the treadmill, doing my 1,200 calorie diet. And eventually those go away. It's scarier to us to be like, I'm just going to eat a little bit different today. And then tomorrow
Yeah.
I'll improve on that and do that for a really long time. We like doing the really hard stuff for just like a couple weeks. We want the 10-day detoxes. We don't want to make long lasting changes, it seems.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was just on Twitter before we jumped on, and some notable figure, I can't remember who it was. I retweeted it, but he was like, "Look, I lost this fat, but I can starve no longer. Like this isn't working. I'd rather be full and fat than starving and fit or something like that." Which is kind of like if you go about things the wrong way and you just try and starve yourself as like a short-term solution, you might get some fat loss, but that's a short-term solution. That's not a long-term strategy. And so, yeah, like what I think what gets at the heart of it is if someone wants a long-term success, it has to be like at the core identity level. Like they have to see themselves as a healthy person, as someone that works out. If it's like something you're just trying to force, pure willpower, blunt force it to happen, uh, yeah, we only have so much willpower
Yeah. Yeah.
before it's gone. I think the music example for me is like one song a month was a very aggressive floor, like systems floor. I didn't realize how it's a lot to
Are
make a
you
song
making
a
the
month.
beat and everything too?
Yeah,
Okay, that's the hard
yeah,
part. I just like got a beat and
yes.
I entered like a freestyle contest once a week is what I was doing. That's a lot
Well,
easier.
I mean that's still a lot. But so 2020 was learn to make music. This March came along and I was releasing my program and I was like, okay, I have to put the song on the back burner. It's April, I'm putting the song on the back burner again. floor was probably to find something where it's like maybe not a song a month, but something that I keep making, keep getting better. Uh, but yeah, that whole system is to me is like the key to making like a long term change.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely seems like it's working for you. And I want to talk a little bit and maybe pitch you an idea here, but you have the 2021 challenge, which is take two companies from 0 to 1 million plus in revenue. That seems to me like it's almost impossible. I could see you doing one, but two companies simultaneously, that seems hard. What do you got in the
That's
works for
funny
this?
because that's exactly what the feedback I've gotten from other people. And so I can tell you the reason I do these challenges and just announce them publicly is one is it's a change I want to make in my life, of course, but also like for this one example, it to me it seems impossible too. So it's not just like it seems 100% impossible. But I feel like if other people see average Joe able to pull it off, that will give them confidence to do to make whether it's a side hustle or go for something that they think is impossible to create a life that they want to live. So the whole idea that it feels impossible to me, I'm like, okay, that's good. I want it to feel impossible. Uh, so yeah, it still feels very impossible, and we'll see what happens because like right now we're already a quarter through the year. We got 9 months left, and we're nowhere near the goal. So the two companies, one is the Meat Health Academy program,
Okay.
and so it just launched last week, and we got 250 people enrolled in the first week, which is great. It's nowhere near the goal, but we'll see how the program builds over the course of the year. And the other one is and it seems like it's kind of like overnight, but I've obviously been working on that for a year. This nasal device I developed to help treat snoring.
Uh-huh.
I've been working on that for years. I just got the patent last year, but now it's finally ready to start selling. So it's been in the works for a long time. But we're basically at no sales, roughly no sales. I mean, we've had a few $1,000s of revenue, but when you're trying to get to a million, that's basically 0%. So the next 9 months, I have a real challenge ahead of me. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people in this current economic environment, more people are realizing they need to be a little more entrepreneurial, side hustles, financial freedom, things like that. Um, and I think financial freedom is really important because, like, if we want freedom, which to me is like one of my core desires, is to have like the freedom to just basically freedom to do what you want to do and make the difference you want to make. You need two things to make that happen. You need your health, and you need financial freedom. Because for me, I never worried about money. Like if you looked at my career, I was always like, to me, money was never going to be the priority. So I did all these things that had no chance of making money. I went to learn how to draw, learn how to make music. Like there's no money in these future. And I do dentistry part time, which could have been a way to make money. But everything I've made in dentistry, I've put into the nasal device I was just telling you about. But the reason I'm saying this now that it's become a priority is it's been a source of stress, even though I made myself not worry about it. Because if one thing goes wrong, I'm gonna have to start doing something I don't want to do because I don't have the financial freedom to fall back on.
Yeah.
And without that, it's like you can't really do what you because you're always worried. Like it's funny. Like last year, I had a peritonsillar abscess. And as a dentist, luckily I know what that is, and I drained it myself. But I have this low cost medical insurance plan, which basically covers nothing. And if I go to a doctor, it's going to cost me, I have a gigantic deductible, whatever. My point is, it's just not, if a serious issue happened to me, I don't have the financial resources to even be okay. So I was like, look, it'd been much more prudent to get financially free and find your health. And then once you have these two things, you can live the life you want to live. But to me, those two things are very, necessary if you really want to be free.
Yeah. Financial freedom, that's to me it's sort of like it's tough because I think going into this, I thought there would come a point where, my bank account has a certain amount of money in it. I would be kind of content. And I've
Yeah.
surpassed the amount that I thought would be. And it's just like, do you want more kind of? I don't know if it's necessarily the money, but it's more of like that it's a proxy measure for the good you're doing, your contribution. And it's also just like, what do I do when I stop? Like, what
Exactly.
yeah.
So, I mean, I agree. I think of money that way as a for sure. Like if Meat Health Academy does really well and does $1 million this year, I think it's just because it is a great program and the people that are getting it are just finding outrageous value. My goal was like 10 to 100 times more value than they're going to pay for the program. And yes, so that would be a proxy of doing good. It would be a nice, but for example, I had spent the last 3, 4 years researching, writing, and I would just publish it on my blog, and thousands of people would read it, and that'd be great. But like I was losing thousands of dollars a month, hosting a website, emailing to a newsletter that's got
Yeah,
over
the
fifty
newsletter,
thousand.
the newsletter gets you. It's so expensive.
50,000 emailing a free newsletter to 50,000 people is costing me hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month,
Yeah.
and so I'm losing money. I feel like I've helped people through my free writing, but you can't just. I feel like those two. You can do a lot of good in the world, but still not have the financial freedom on the other end. Uh, so my goal is. I remember when I was a young adult, I was like, I'm never going to make decisions based on money. My parents were stressed about money a lot. Uh, for a good reason. Like my parents, they had 4 kids under the age of 5, and my dad started a new business. Like there's and no money, so it's like I can't imagine that kind of stress. But obviously, money was a big stressor as a kid when I was growing up. And I remember I was like, I'm not gonna make money. I'm not gonna do anything that for the sake of making money. But that kind of I feel like that limited me early in my career because then it's like you're in a financial place where if something goes wrong, you're gonna have to do whatever you have to do in order to make money to survive. So there's that degree of, you know, not having the freedom to do the things you want to do. If I wanted to just, draw and make music all day, I can't do that because I won't be able to pay for the rent. So there's a degree of of like you need to have enough to be able to do the things you want to do.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely agree. And then do you have any idea what your next year's challenge is going to be?
I don't. I really don't. I usually start thinking about it around this time. It takes me about a whole year to, figure out like what is the next thing I want to do. Uh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm up for suggestions.
Yeah. So yeah, you've been doing this. This is almost 10 years you've been doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. You did so the challenges were create an online fitness training, do a physique competition, graduate dental school. That's kind of a freebie, I feel like.
That was a freebie.
Build a dental sleep medicine practice. So yeah, how did building your dental practice go? Was that tough?
So when I was in dental school, I started. Man, this was like 2011 or 2012. Uh, I started this online website basically. I thought I had been studying fitness for over a decade at that point, and I was like, look, I know how to get fit. I'm going to start teaching this online. While I was in dental school, I don't recommend doing it. It's like starting something like that while you're in dental school. But I learned a lot about like online, like how to set up a website, how to find people to buy a product or whatever. And so when I graduated dental school, I at least had this skill set. I created a website. I was able to market patients to that website and get patients in the door, which gave me a degree of like maybe naive confidence that I could just start a practice out of dental school because this like I'm pretty sure there's no one that's ever started a dental sleep medicine straight out of dental school. It's like a crazy stupid idea, um, but it worked out. So I mean that the process was like I'm glad I started teaching fitness online when I was in dental school because it did that's what allowed me to have the confidence to try and do it when I graduated.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let us know in chat, guys, if you have any questions. And I wanted to pitch you my amazing business idea. I just don't have the skills for it, but there's someone out there that does, and it'll be super successful. I guarantee it. It's you do limited runs of T-shirts that are designed by famous artists. So you start with just people that are really artistic. They're kind of like the struggling, hungry artist type that are really artistic. So they'll make a nice design for your T-shirts. You only print 100 of them, and it's scarcity. You sell them for $100 each, and as you scale up, you build this brand. It's called One of 100, and eventually you start getting like these really famous people, like famous rappers, famous musicians, that they want to do like their limited run of shirts. and because people love like the scarcity collectors, all this
Dude,
collection stuff now.
this sounds like an NTF.
I know, that's what I was thinking. You could do that too. NFT, an NFT.
Or sorry, NFT,
Yeah,
non-fungible token.
you could do something like that to go with it for to authenticate the ownership and stuff.
I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Okay, I'm looking through chat here. Do we got any questions, guys? Not too many questions yet. Get them in chat if you do have any questions. Um, so, so the 2018 challenge was 365 days of only eating meat. So, like, walk us through that a little bit. Were you already, when you started that, kind of like on a meat-based diet? And
Yeah.
was it just meat? Was there like salt? Was there any like seasonings and stuff?
So yeah, I started eating just meat mid 2017, and with no intention of like only eating meat moving forward. But like I was saying, I was feeling so good, and I was like, look. And one of the big impetuses was so there's this doctor, Dr. Sean Baker. He went on Joe Rogan. I think it was like the end of 2017,
He went on Keto for
and
Normies at the end of 2017 too, which is
oh,
our
nice.
podcast.
Nice. So yeah, so after he went on Rogan in 2017, my little side project, Meat.Health, like it started getting just tons of traffic, like tons of traffic. And I started to build a small community around that. And I was like, this is something that I'm just gonna challenge myself to do it the rest of 2018. And so yeah, I did it the rest of 2018. It was just meat, salt, water. I mean, it included just basically animal products.
Coffee?
Eggs were fine. I eliminated coffee for most of. I'm trying to remember. I eliminated coffee for a long time, but I brought it back in, it's something I bring in and out on an ongoing basis. But I tend to do okay with it. So as long as yeah. Long story short, I tend to do okay with it. But I think most people do best if they remove it for at least a time and bring it back in to see how they do. Because for some people, that makes all the difference. But yeah, I had salt, meat, organs, eggs, seafood, animal-based products. Yeah, for the whole year, and then most of all of 2019 too. So yeah, it went on a little bit longer.
So when you do a carnivore diet for so long like that, when you start introducing plants again, do you notice any issues, like heightened issues, as opposed to what you were doing prior to starting the carnivore diet?
So I think it really matters what those foods are. So for example, one of the first things I tested in was honey. Okay, it's just basically I'll call it a benign carbohydrate, basically just sugar. There is some plant toxins that could potentially cause issues, but generally in the dosage that you're going to eat, not so much. And it was totally fine. Like I didn't know if like I was going to have like an energy spike or an energy crash, but basically it was very non-eventful. Same thing with avocados. I tested avocados and I hadn't had fiber in 2.5 years. And I was like, man, are these going to just wreck my gut? And I was totally fine. But then I tried some other things and it really messed with digestion. I think overall, I experienced a higher sensitivity with things that maybe are disagreeable. And so I've been able to tailor to be like, look, if I want to eat carbohydrates for a certain reason, which are the ones that I'm going to do best with? And which are the ones that are more problemsome?
Okay. And then we are getting questions in chat. What's your take on grass-fed beef only?
Well, I think it's grass fed beef is kind of my gold standard go to. If that's all I could eat, that's what I would eat. But as anyone that's shopping knows, like if you're buying it at the grocery store at least. So I have a local farmer that I generally buy from. So I recommend that for the cost savings, the bulk, etc., and as well as just like the environmental aspect and everything like that. But and if you're buying from a grocery store, like grass-fed, grass-finished beef is significantly more expensive. And if you're going to just try and eat meat and only eat grass-fed, grass-finished, and eat like cuts that you really like, it's going to get expensive pretty quick. So when it comes to like nutritional profile differences, there are differences, but they tend to be quite small. And so if finance is an issue, I wouldn't worry about eating conventional meat. But to me, like grass-fed, grass-finished is kind of like a gold standard. So kind of those
Yeah.
thoughts around that.
Going to the grocery store and buying the grass fed stuff is kind of for suckers, I would say, in general. Like, it's so much more expensive. Like, if you go to Whole Foods and you get the grass fed steaks, it's just like, it's crazy. It's like $30 a pound.
They're
Um,
so expensive. It's cost prohibitive for most people. So,
yeah.
but yeah.
But you get a lot cheaper. You can get like $10 a pound for steaks and stuff from a local farm. I think Butcher Box is even cheaper than going to the grocery store a lot of the time. You get something like that.
For the grass finished stuff, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, we got some people asking about gum disease and low carb diets. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it tends to just improve gingivitis, periodontitis. I've heard from many people that have had gingivitis, periodontitis see improvements in oral health, which does not surprise me whatsoever.
And then, do you have any routines since you are such a person who just like accomplishes things consistently? Like either morning routines, night routines, anything you've been doing for a while?
Yeah, I think the morning routine is super important. So for me, like I get up and one thing I wanted to work on. So sometimes I throw in challenges on top of my current challenges. Like last year, I really wanted to work on my mobility. Like I've been good about working out every day. It's been part of my life for decades. Eating right, no, not an issue. But for me, the stretching, I've never really consistently worked on mobility, and I knew that was an area I needed to
Yeah.
work on it. But so generally, I was like, okay, I'll do mobility work after I work out, and then I forced myself to limit my workouts to an hour because I love working out and I can get carried away, and I'm like, look, I gotta get back to work. Um, Anyways, when I tried to put mobility on the end of that workout, it didn't work, and I was like, look, I got to move this time to a different spot. So first thing in the morning, do 10 minutes of mobility work. Then I'll do my drawing, 5 minutes of drawing. If I'm feeling like doing 10 to 20, 30, I let that happen. And so, yeah, I have these systems set up that, that allow me to get done the things I want to get done. Some things don't need a system. Like once they become so ingrained in your life, like it sounds like very rigid, but it becomes pretty easy. Like a lot of people don't need to sit, they go to sleep with their own system. They didn't have to formulate a
They don't
plan.
need a
Like for
system to
my
watch
working out,
Netflix. They
you
don't
don't
need
need
a
a system to watch
Netflix system.
Netflix. Exactly. So some of these systems are very like they're like me working out. I don't have a set time during the day when I work out, but I know it's going to generally be in the afternoon. It's usually when I need a little mental break. I've been going at it for 8+ hours. I'm like, all right, let's take a mental break. Let's work out. But I don't schedule that. It's just something that happens like naturally after those systems get ingrained. One of the things I talk about a lot is systems can become identity, and then it becomes effortless. Like there's no willpower for me to work out. Like there's no willpower for me to eat the way I eat. But initially, when you're setting up these systems, there is a little bit of willpower to get them in place.
Yeah, with the mobility, are you just doing static stretches or what is that?
I do a few different things. So there's this guy Bob Cooley. I read his book last year. It's about kind of stretching under resistance and movement. So I incorporate some of that. Um, Mostly, I messed up my shoulder a number of years ago, and I was like, look, I need to get to the bottom of this. Like, try and fix this mobility. I tend to have a kyphotic spine, thoracic spine. And so I'm like, let's work on mobility to kind of, straighten out the thoracic spine a little bit. So I just do a number of stretches, some kind of stable, some more dynamic.
Okay. I think that's pretty much all. Oh, someone's asking about root canals being toxic. I know some fillings are like not great for you too. Is there any dental stuff we should know about? Some people even question fluoride. Just touch on all of the common things with dentistry that health people want to avoid.
Yeah, there's a good question. I get it all the time. And one thing people I feel like sometimes don't consider is there's a pro and con to every kind of treatment. And so if you need a root canal, okay, that means if you're going to decide not to get a root canal because it's toxic, well, your option is you have to take the tooth out. Okay, so if you're going to leave a hole in your mouth, that's fine, but maybe you want to replace that. So then you got to put a piece of titanium into your bone, okay, which might be just fine, but it's expensive. So, I mean, there's other things to consider as well. I don't think, I've looked at the research with, root canals and mercury fillings, composite fillings. So that's the next question. So root canal fillings, briefly, weigh the pros and cons. I think it's better to keep a natural tooth in your mouth than try and get an implant. If you're worried about it and you prefer to have a piece of titanium in the bone versus an implant in the root of the tooth, or versus root canal in the root of the tooth, the research doesn't support that being super toxic. It's kind of like amalgam fillings. They get a very bad rep for the mercury, which I understand is obviously you don't want to be eating a bunch of mercury. Okay, you don't want to eat large fish because you can get a lot of mercury. However, mercury in amalgams tends to stay in the amalgam, and so look, if I was to get a filling right now, look, you can get a mercury like amalgam filling or a composite, but composite fillings have their own consequences, okay, with BPA and other things like that. So there's like this cost benefit where it's easiest just to keep good oral hygiene. Don't get in a position where you need to have these things done. But then if you do need to have these things done, you got to weigh the cost benefits. Fluoride is a perfect example. So most kids do not eat well. I do this pediatric dentistry and it's extremely sad. I ask them what they eat. It is just total junk. Heavy processed carbohydrates and sugars make up most of their calories. And their teeth are rotting. Okay, so if you have fluoride in the water, it helps reduce the damage. It does help. It helps make the teeth stronger. However, if you have fluoride in the water, there's potential consequences as well. So we're weighing. Personally, I would prefer not to have fluoride in my water. I have a Berkey filter, and I filter the fluoride out of my water because I take care of my teeth. However, what's the consequences of a kid losing all their teeth at a young age? And maybe fluoride in the water help prevent that. So there's this cost benefit ratio. A lot of these things, I agree, are less than ideal. Fluoride in the water, less than ideal, unless it's going to save you from losing your teeth. Root canal, less than ideal, but if you're going to keep a tooth in your mouth that you want to keep, maybe not the worst solution. So I've been asked this question a lot, and like he's kind of like on the mainstream side of dental health, but I'm like, you got to consider the pros and the cons.
Yeah. Very interesting stuff. Where can everyone follow along with all your challenges and just stay up to date on everything you're doing?
I think I write a weekly newsletter, send it out every Saturday. What's just some interesting stuff I think that people
Yeah,
like.
what's in the newsletter?
Usually like a health topic of the day, things that we've been talking about like today. Like I hate the word self help, self improvement, but basically, how do you optimize your life? How do you achieve the life you want to do? Hit goals, things like that.
Yeah.
Strategies I use, things I'm reading about, researching, as well as some things on the finance front, which is I'm not a financial advisor. My younger brother is, but I've gone deep down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, which it sounds like you have as well. And so
What
I'm
does your
always
brother
reading.
say about that?
Oh, I converted him. Yeah, so so yeah, he's a believer. When it comes to like institutional adoption as from like a financial advisor, they have limited means to get exposure right now. I think with a US ETF, that'll change a lot, which we may see sooner rather than later. I know they got one in Canada, but yeah. So that, and then just some fun stuff too. So it's kind of a not just a one thing newsletter, but covered a bunch of different topics.
Yeah, are you sending updates with 2021 challenge, like your monthly revenue or whatever?
I was going to do quarterly updates, and I've decided I'm going to do every 4 months, which would be like a hockey period. So we're going to do 3 periods. So I'm going to send out an update at the end of April.
Moving the goalposts. Okay, yeah, this has been fun. Everyone check it out, kevinstock.io. I guess that's probably where you can find like everything. That's his website. But yeah, this has been great. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I know we kind of, just like my life, touched on like a million different things.
Yeah. We need to have you back on at the end of 2021. See how you did.
Okay, that's a deal.